What's up, Nightwalkers? Today I'm going over HMT, which is helmet mounted thermal. HMT has been a thing for a while now, but it does seem to be getting more and more popular these days. And this is something I've wanted to try out for quite a while. Ever since the FLIR breech came out and different mounts appeared, to mount them on a helmet in combination with the PVS-14, it's something I wanted to do, and I decided to get this set up. And after using it for the last week or two, I can definitely see the benefits of it. And of course, the benefits is you have thermal and night vision on the same helmet mount. And the reason that's so effective, is traditionally with a thermal monocular, you're going to have it in your hand and you're going to be picking it up and scanning with it whenever you decide to scan with it. And that's effective. I mean, guys have been doing that with night vision for quite a while. Still works great. But having it on the helmet, it's just much more comfortable, and you can scan for much longer time periods. Having the thermal mounted on your helmet like this. Then if you are maneuvering towards the animal, person, whatever it is you're trying to target or identify with the thermal, it's much easier to keep an eye on them with the thermal than it is, doing the handheld method. And the reason that's important is, night vision works great. In some conditions, doesn't work so great. So, for example, animals, if you use an illuminator and you get eye shine, you can certainly see where the animal's at. Potentially identify it once you see the eyes and maybe see the shape and outline and all that kind of stuff. But if you lose the eye shine or the animal takes off, in some conditions you just may not see where it went. Whereas with a thermal, they can't hide from their heat signature, and you could easily tell where they're located, if they took off, which way they went, all that kind of thing, which then makes it much easier to target them with the night vision using an infrared illuminator and laser. With an HMT setup, you need some type of a dual bridge to mount both devices together on your helmet. There's a few different ones out there. This is the Night's Vision, the KVC Universal Bridge. I also have the Mod Armory D14 from previously. I've had this for quite a while. And then there's also a Wilcox. Wilcox has a dual version as well that you could use. I don't have that one here to show you, but I got the KVC and the D14. For me, I find that the KVC is a superior dual bridge when it comes to using a breech with it. And the reason I say that is on the back of the bridge, you have these adjustment screws here, and these are for IPD, interpupillary distance spacing. So by rotating these knobs, you can move the devices back and forth, left and right, so you can get them lined up with your eye evenly. And so the reason that's important is, so for example, with the D14, what I've always done is use this with dual PVS-14s. You got your two arms to do it. For me, I wanted QD functionality, so that way I could quickly take off one of my PVS-14s and then put on the breech. Since I have dual PVS-14s, I like to run them together if I can and have the choice to run the breech when I want. So when I run this setup, I can't get the breech to line up even with my eye. So what I end up having to do is, with the breech, I've got these different rail interfaces here. So you got one there, one here, and one there. And so using the D14, I had to run it on this top rail with the buttons facing inwards towards the PVS-14. That puts the screen in portrait mode versus landscape, so instead of this way, it's like that. It still works okay that way, but I still couldn't get it lined up quite even with my eye. So what I'd have to do is rotate the PVS-14 out of the way and then kind of shift my helmet to get this in front of my eye. And it definitely works, but it's just not the best, in my opinion, in terms of using it that way. So I prefer to use the KVC. Now, to give integrated components in Mod Armory, not to completely crap on them, that's using this dovetail adapter. And so this is basically the same thing as the KVC K-clips. The main difference is with the Mod Armory one, you could remove this dovetail and spin it, so that way you could use the same one to do left or right. Whereas with KVC, it's all fixed in place. So they give you a left and a right one. So you actually have to just, buy the pair together. Whereas with the integrated components, you can buy just the one, which this is like half the price of the set of these. So anyways, they do sell an actual dedicated arm that replaces this dovetail piece. You just take this screw out right here, then you replace it. So I believe that one's going to work better than the dovetail adapter. But for me, I wanted the QD functionality, so that's why I tried that. And so because that doesn't work for me, for the D14 with the QD, I just rely on the KVC bridge for that. And it works great, having the ability to adjust these screws and bring the devices back and forth. I can just get a really good image every time. And then, you know, once you have them stowed up in position and you lower them back down, they're just going to go right back where they're supposed to, and you really don't have to mess around with your helmet and stuff like that. With the KVC bridge, your mount is really important in terms of which one you're going to use with it. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, so the G24, you know, the Wilcox L4 G24, it works great. You don't have anything sticking off the sides here to interfere with the KVC bridge. And by interfere, what I'm talking about is with the KVC, once you bring them up, they lock in place. So you can move them further up. I mean, not a whole lot, but they lock, and you have to depress these buttons right here to lower it back down, which isn't a big deal. I mean, I wish it was forced to overcome. I just kind of hate using these buttons. I still haven't gotten perfect with using them. It seems like sometimes I'm just missing it. I'm just kind of finger banging this thing, trying to get the button pressed. But with the G24, it's not an issue. But with something like this Tatum, this Neurotos Tatum, and I believe most other Neurotos mounts, they've got levers and stuff sticking off the side. So the problem you run into is if you bring it up, it's in the way. So if you can see, it's not the easiest thing to get to. You got to kind of, you know, wiggle your finger in here to hit it. If you got big fingers, you know, that could be a problem for you. So if this is the only mount that you have, you could make it work. Just don't lock it out. So just bring it up to where it doesn't lock, and then you can get it back down. But you know, if you get it up there and it locks, you know, you're gonna be running into that problem here. And then on the other side, the knob's kind of in the way. Not as bad as the other side, but you still got the same problem. So that's something to look out for with the KVC bridge. When it comes to the breech, I really love this thing. I think this thing works perfect, at least for my conditions out here. You know, I'm typically about 50 yards distance to objects or animals I'm trying to look at, maybe 75 yards max. I had a PTS-233 before this, so I was pretty familiar with how it performed. And this is the same core that's used in the breech, and so I'm perfectly happy with it. I think it works awesome for my distances out here. In particular, the outdoor alert mode that FLIR has. They got a bunch of different color palettes. FLIR, I think they do a good job with their different palettes. Outdoor alert mode in particular is my favorite. I think it works the best. You do need to go into the settings and adjust it for your conditions and your environment in terms of rocks, you know, whatever else you got out there. And once you get it dialed in right, you know, it changes to gain, contrast, all the other stuff in there. Once you get it dialed in for your particular location, outdoor alert mode is just awesome. It works really good at detecting things outside. Now with the breech, it does come with the standard single CR123 battery that's used to power it. You're only going to get, you know, maybe an hour tops. I got closer to 45 minutes on one battery, and it was just a pain in the ass. So the best thing you could do with the breech is get an external power source. You got some different options out there. You could get something like a remote DIY battery pack like this Anker. This is like a 10,000, and I just epoxied on this this QD rail section here, or you know, adapter. You could do something like the TVC TRB. This one works good too. The only thing I don't like about it is it only has one mounting location on it, so you're kind of relegated to how you want to mount it on your helmet rails. You know, so you may have to get a longer cable on it depending on how you want to use it. This is a nice holder though. I mean, it's definitely secure. It definitely keeps it protected. So that's another option. What I ended up doing and what I prefer to do is I picked up this Mod Armory 16650 battery extender. And so one thing to keep in mind is with FLIR, they have apparently early production breeches used a fine thread. This is coarse thread. And so you got to select either fine thread or coarse thread for the battery extender. So just know which one you got. Coarse thread's going to look like that. So the battery extender, you know, you just get it in here, screw it on, take your 16650 battery that you got to buy separately. I'm using these Orbtronics. I bought a 2-pack of these, and with 2 of these out all night long, I've yet to run out of battery. You take your battery cap that came with your FLIR. Now there is a rubber strap that holds this thing on. Now it's going to be maxed out with the extender, so I just took it off. And so once you get it on there, you're good to go. It does stick out a little bit, but this doesn't get in the way whatsoever. And then compare to something like a battery pack with a cable. You don't have to worry about the cable getting snagged or damaging the connector or anything like that at all. And now speaking of the connectors, here's your port. This is your USB-C port on the breech. Now the rubber strap holds in the plug that goes into the port. It's a pain in the ass. This thing comes out all the time. I mean, you look at it wrong and it pops out. So what I ended up doing was taking some electrical tape and with the plug inserted inside the port, I just taped it down. And so that way it stays protected, so I'm not going to get water or dirt, whatever, any kind of contaminants inside the port. So that's something that you're definitely going to want to consider doing. The lens cap is going to fail on you at some point. I learned this from my PTS-233. They use the same type of deal, you know, rubber lens cap secured with this fishing line that goes through the hole. And so what happens is over time, this is going to get brittle and wear out, or if you yank it too hard, it's going to tear it. So I'm just going to run it this way. And then once it fails, I'm just going to remove, you know, this lanyard piece for the lens cap, and then just kind of keep the lens cap separate. But this is something to keep in mind, that this is going to be a problem for you at some point. I'd say the biggest complaint I have with the Breach is that there's no easy way to do a standby mode on it. So for example, the PTS-233, you know, it had a knob, kind of like a PVS-14 on the back. And once it was powered on, you just moved it all the way to the left and it put it in standby mode, which means you didn't have any light coming out of here and it was saving batteries. And then to put it back turned on, you just moved the knob all the way to the right and it came back on. With the Breach, you don't have that kind of a standby option. The standby mode, you know, it's a bunch of different button presses for standby mode and to power it off. So I don't even use the standby mode because it's a pain in the ass. And that's one thing to keep in mind. And another reason why having an external battery is really important, because there's no reliable standby mode that really works like it should. You're just going to leave it turned on the whole time. And so because of that, you're definitely going to want to have a better battery life out of the thing. Getting to the meat and potatoes of this setup, you know, HMT with night vision. Since I posted the picture of this setup on Instagram, I've gotten a bunch of these questions, and they're the same questions I had, you know, before I got this thing. And those questions are basically, how well does this function as a system together? You know, for example, you know, do the images fuse? How do they work together? You know, just all that kind of stuff in terms of using these together on the same bridge. Now, what I can tell you for myself is I cannot get these to fuse together. I can kind of get them to fuse together on objects that are within arm's distance, you know, really close. Then the thermal kind of overlays on the night vision, but otherwise I just see double vision. So what I mean by double vision is I'll see the night vision image, and then to the left of it, because this is on my left eye, I'll see the thermal image kind of offset into a double image type of a thing, you know, night vision and thermal. It is doable sometimes, you know. What I end up doing is I find myself going into a 1,000-yard stare kind of a thing to try to see them both together at the same time. And it's just not very natural. It kind of works sometimes, but what happens is even if you can see, you know, a thermal, you know, image of whatever you're looking at with the night vision, my eyes end up going back and forth, fighting between which one to focus on. You can kind of force yourself just by, you know, focusing more on your left eye or right eye in terms of which image that you want to keep your brain focused on. But every now and then your brain just kind of decides that it's going to do whatever it wants to do and go back and forth. So what I find works best for me is if I'm using night vision, I just flip the Breach up. Then if I want to use thermal, same thing, I just flip the night vision up, and then I'm on thermal. It does seem to work pretty good. If I'm up in night vision and I flip this down, my eye just kind of goes right to this one. So that is doable. But if I'm moving, I definitely have to keep the brightness all the way down to the lowest setting on the Breach, but it still interferes. It's kind of bright. And if I'm walking around, it kind of interferes with me sometimes in terms of spotting rocks and different objects on the ground to help me navigate under night vision. So I just find myself keeping it up like that if I'm just trying to focus on night vision for movement. Where this works really great is for scanning. So let's say you're walking around with night vision, you want to stop and scan for a minute. You put this down, you just move this thing up, and I mean, scanning on your head mount thermal like this that's really just the best way to scan with thermal. It works out really good. Now, if you're somebody that can get both of these to fuse together, hey, good for you, man. I can't get myself to do it. My brain just doesn't work that way. And I have tried doing it with the thermal on my dominant eye and vice versa with night vision. Either way, it doesn't work. I just find it works the best for me having the thermal on my non-dominant eye. Now, when I was running them together, primarily trying to do it, what I did, I used this clear amber night amber filter on the 14, and then I set the Breach to sepia, which that color palette, sepia, it's a yellow color, and it works really good with the amber filter on a green phosphor tube. So I thought those two images played together the most. But since I'm not running them together like this often, you know, I just take off the amber filter and I keep the breech in outdoor alert mode because that one works the best for me. And it doesn't interfere since I'm not really running them together. All right, so here's side by side. This is on a no moon night with some clouds. I mean, there's no question with the thermal, you're going to be able to tell if there's something out there. This is outdoor alert mode, works really good. I mean, as you can tell, you know, something that's alive out there just pops. And now she's just standing still behind this bush, and she'll start waving. With the night vision, it's very difficult to see her, even she's waving. Whereas with the thermal, I mean, there's just no question. Okay, right here, she's peeking around the side of this tree. You know, passive use of night vision with no, you know, infrared illuminators, you've got no chance of seeing her back there like you do with the thermal. All right, then this is just for illustration purposes, so you can see the difference between the thermal, the night vision, with her walking from back there to up closer. All right, this is great. I had this cavity back here. He was trying to peek around this bush, and like with the thermal, outdoor alert mode, I mean, there's just no hiding from this. I use this thing handheld a lot still. I really like it on a lanyard. So I just took some, you know, some small paracord here and stuck it through the lanyard hole. And so what that allows me to do is then take a piece of 550 with this Night Eyes S-beaner, and I just clip it on there and just run it that way. And in fact, even when I use it on the helmet, I keep the lanyard on there all the time. And then the lanyard's on my neck, and then that way, you know, I always keep the PVS-14 with me too for the most part if I'm going to be out. So then if I want to take this off and put a 14 on, I just take it off and it hangs on my neck. And then I can put the 14 in into the bridge, and then this thing's with me as well, so that way I'm not out the thermal. I have a few different tips or tricks, I guess however you want to call it, to quickly use the breech at the same time as the dual PVS-14s. And so what I do is, so for example, if I've got this thing on and I just want to take a quick peek, I literally just push up my helmet and then hold the breech up to my eye. And that works really good for a quick peek. You could also just tilt your head back. Just tilt your head back and then hold this up. You won't get the best image of the screen, but you can see enough to see if something's there. And so that works really good. The other method I do is I'll just rotate one of these up, and then with my hand bring it up to my eye and scan that way. And then whenever I'm done, I just hang that back down and then just put the PVS-14 back down. And so I don't lock it. It's just faster to bring it up without locking it, so I don't have to mess with the button, and then just bring it back down. The other method that works pretty good is I'll do a partial stow where I push the button down and I just kind of hold it up without locking it in. And then I can get full eye onto the screen of the thermal, and I'll scan that way. And then when I'm done, it's really fast just to put the dual PVS-14s back down. And so this has kind of become my favorite for doing it this way. But honestly, if I just want to take a quick peek, I just tilt my head back and hold this up and take a peek through the thermal that way. And I find that to be the most effective. With dual PVS-14s, it's kind of heavy, so if you're doing that all night long, you know, your neck might get kind of fatigued. So you might want to try one of the other methods. And that's if I'm moving with night vision. So if I want to be standing still for a while and scanning, what I'll do is I'll just take off the 14, stick it in my pocket or into my dump pouch, and then I'll pop the breech back in. And because this is on my neck lanyard, it's secure, and then when I'm done using it, I can just pop it off and hang it again, and then put the 14 back on. And so this takes some practice to do it at night. You know, definitely, you know, or some eye pro, you don't mind scratching, because when I was practicing getting this back in here, whenever I'd miss it, I'd smack myself in the eye. So that's something you got to take practice and do it. But I've become pretty good at swapping these out at night just by feel with both devices. Whenever you switch between the breech and a PVS-14, the one thing you got to keep in mind is you may have to make some adjustments to your IPD spacing on the breech side. So for example, once you get the breech lined up even with your eye, You know, once you take it out and put in the PVS-14, it's probably going to be off. So you'll just have to spin this and kind of line it up even with your eye. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. You know, who knows? You could be lucky. You could have the right kind of facial shape or eye spacing to where you don't have to do it. But just keep that in mind that you may have to mess with the IPD settings whenever you go between the Breach and a PVS-14. To wrap up the video and give you my thoughts on this setup, personally, I think this is a killer way to start, especially if you're not opposed to running a PVS-14 monocular. If you're somebody that likes a monocular, I think this is a no question the best way to do it. Now, if you're somebody like me, I prefer dual tubes. Then having this type of a choice where I can run PVS-14s together if I want, and then mix and match the Breach when needed or whenever I decide to. I think that offers, you know, exceptional versatility compared to having a fixed set of binos, where your only option if you want to integrate thermal is a Cody, you know, clip-on thermal imager, which, I mean, those have some pluses and minuses compared to this type of a setup. But ultimately, this is going to give you the most versatility. So even if you start off with this and you end up going into a dedicated set of binos or whatever, I mean, you can never go wrong adding on a thermal monocular. So whether it's the Breach or something else, you'll always find a use for one of these things. And in my opinion, if you're going to be using night vision outside, you need to have thermal, because it's just no question it's going to be the best way to find stuff out in the dark. Whereas with night vision, it can struggle sometimes, especially in super low light conditions. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Leo.